Thank you. God, we love you, and we thank you. We thank you that we're able to help. You have blessed us. You have given to us. You have been generous with us. And Father, I am grateful to be part of a congregation that is willing to respond the same way. Thank you, God. Right now, as we talk about this guy that so many of us identify with, Peter, and just his journey, his faith journey, I pray that you speak to us. God, it's common in Christian circles to go to the mountaintop and to experience the mountaintop, but to want to stay there while the work needs to be done in the valley. And so, Father, I pray that your word meets us where we are this morning. Let us hear directly from you. We pray these things in your Son's name. Amen. So that is the question. Have you ever been somewhere and you didn't want to leave? Like you've been to the thing, the event, the vacation, the conference, the camp, the whatever it may be, and you got caught up in the moment, and if you could just stay right there like that forever, it would be perfect. You ever have any of those moments? I mean, I've had a couple. Okay, I've had a couple of those moments, and the interesting connection between these is that these moments I had to travel to get to. The moments where I was caught up and man, if it could just stay like this forever, was not really part of the routine. It wasn't part of the day-to-day normal. The I could stay here forever moments in my life seemed to be spontaneous, seemed to be unplanned. And that's where we are today. With Peter being Peter. He wants to stay in the moment. That's what the tense are all about. So let's read it, Mark chapter 9, verses 2 through 8. This is hopefully a familiar story to you. After 6 days, he took Peter, James, and John with him all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and covered them, and a voice came from the cloud. "This is my son whom I love. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, is that it? Okay. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. They kept the matter to themselves, discussing what rising from the dead meant. And they asked him, "Why do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first?" Jesus replied, "To be sure, Elijah does come first and restores all things. Why then is it written that the Son of Man must suffer much and be rejected? But I tell you, Elijah has come, and they have done to him everything they wished, just as it was written about him." So, this story is found in the book of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I'm going to pull nuggets from Matthew and Luke as well as this text right here. They all begin with this after 6 days. Luke actually says 8. That's a different story. We'll have to get into that some other time. But Matthew and Mark are like, after 6 days, well, that's an important detail. What happened 6 days ago that we need to notice this time frame? Well, the last teaching, the most latest teaching by Jesus before this event happened in, can you figure it out? Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8 ends with this passage not coming up on the screen. "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what he has to what they have done. Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming into his kingdom. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all record that teaching. And then the very next thing, 6 days later, is this transfiguration. Now, we really don't know what takes place during the 6 days. I know that Jesus just didn't sit around, lounge by the pool, and do that kind of stuff. There was ministry that took place. We just don't know what it is really that took place. And so 6 days is significant to the Jewish man anyway, because when God summoned Moses to the top of Mount Sinai to receive the law, there was this 6-day journey. This 6 days of passing where Moses did all this stuff, going up and down. He did these things before God summoned him, and then the law, the 10 Commandments, were given to him. Jesus is known as the greater Moses. Jesus came to fulfill all the law that Moses was given. And so if you're reading this from a Jewish perspective, you make that connection. That there's this 6-day window, and they're tying it in for the Jews to realize that this guy Moses, who you adore, who you worship some, who you are in awe of, this guy Moses that we revere, oh no, this guy Jesus is even greater than him. And so this number 6 in this detail is certainly important to those who know the Old Testament, know the Old Testament law. And so 6 days goes by. Peter, James, and John, they get the invite to go with Jesus to the mountaintop. All right? Now, we don't know exactly what the others are doing. We'll figure it out in just a few minutes what they're doing. But these three get called to the mountaintop. And it says, and there Jesus was transfigured before them. It's like we get there. Hey, we're alone. That detail is in there. Just the 4 of them. Bam. Jesus has his appearance changed. Now, the interesting thing about this word transfigured, you talk to different people about it, it almost seems like there's just this physical appearance that takes place. But the word transfigures describes a change on the outside that comes from the inside. It's the opposite of, if you will, masquerade, which is this outward change that does not come from within. And so we oftentimes think that there's Jesus, he's there, and his physical appearance is changed clearly, but it's just this outward thing that takes place. But this metamorphosis that takes place means that it is coming from the inside. The change is happening here, and it's radiating out. Here's what it is. Jesus allowed his glory to radiate through his whole being. And the mountaintop experience became, if you will, the Holy of Holies. And for a moment, Peter, James, John, they get to see Jesus for who he really is. I heard a minister say one time, a long time ago, that the real miracle here is that for 33 years, Jesus contained his glory within his flesh. That is the miracle that we are exposing here. And in this moment, he allows Peter, James, and John to see who he really is. Now, remember, this takes place on the top of a mountain. We did a series on mountains in the Bible. And one consistent thing God does throughout the Bible is he reveals his glory on the mountain. Right? I mean, you can go through so many stories of God on the mountain, and he reveals something miraculous about who he is, about his nature. He reveals his glory on the mountain, yet his love and mercy in the valley. Because you can't have the mountain without the valley. And so this is what's taking place. God is revealing his glory. And Peter, James, and John have a front row seat to this. And it says that his clothes became dazzling white. And what's interesting is how the different authors who recorded the story described the event. Of course, Mark, which we're reading here, this is Peter's pal, right? What Mark writes, he's getting it from Peter. And so Peter is the source for the information. Clothes are dazzling white. Matthew also wrote it, so he had to get his information from James or John. And Luke also wrote this account, which came years later, and so he had to get the information secondhand too. Matthew's recording of this says that his clothes were as bright as the sun. All right, now we just experienced an eclipse not too long ago. You guys remember all the warnings, all the stuff. Don't look up, don't look up. It will blind you. That is Jesus' clothes. They are as bright as the sun. Luke says that his clothes were as bright as a flash of lightning. Anybody ever be real close to a lightning strike? I mean, it happens real quick, and it lights up the whole sky. Your eyes are kind of flashy, and they're blinded a little bit. You're taken back. That's how Matthew and Luke describe the clothes that Jesus is wearing. Mark, through Peter's description, his clothes were bleached really well. Better than any of y'all could do it. I mean, you put your grandma up there, man, whatever bleach they were using back then, man, it was better than anything you got going on. And then some other guys appear. I'm not sure if they were wearing name tags. I'm not sure if, James and John sat in Sunday school and they remember like flannel graph pictures. But Moses and Elijah are recognizable. And they were talking, it says, with Jesus. Now, what are they talking about? Our text doesn't reveal it. Matthew doesn't reveal it. But if you want to win at Bible trivia, just so you know, they were speaking to Jesus about his departure. It's interesting. Like that's why they met. They came down, and they're like the ones. And I don't know if it's Jesus telling them how it's going to go down, or if they're just passing news. Hey, we got some news from God the Father, the big guy up there, and this is how it's going to go down. You're gonna be standing there talking to your disciples, and you're just going to suddenly float away. We don't know, but we know that they are talking about his departure, which he is about to bring to fulfillment in Jerusalem. And this is where Peter is Peter. Now, this time he's not alone. This time he's got some buddies, and they're drafting with him. They're there. He's got some companions. And Luke goes on to give this detail, signaling Peter out. It says, Peter and his companions were very sleepy. When they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. Right now, obviously the accounts, because they came from three different perspectives, will have some differing details. And it's only human nature to not speak negatively of yourself. Peter's not going to tell Mark, oh yeah, by the way, we got tired and passed out up there, almost missing the event. But Luke gets the detail. And Luke shares something that others don't. Peter and his companions almost miss this moment because they're sleepy. I mean, this is Sunday afternoon nap time for these guys. Y'all ever go on a long hike before? I used to hike a lot, throw a hammock in the backpack. I would hike in one way, sit by a waterfall, whatever, throw the hammock up, take a nap, rest a little bit, and then hike back out. Well, they have climbed up this mountain, and Peter's like, man, we're tired, so we're going to go over here and we're sleepy. I mean, sleepy to the point that we have to fully wake up. All right, so there's this going on, and you think about it, these three have an issue with staying awake in Jesus' presence. Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus is about to go to the cross. Can you guys pray for me? They're sleeping. Now, there's a time and a place in our day for sleep. It's important to our health. Man, I got to thinking through this. How many moments have we missed because we're napping spiritually? Not a literal nap, but relationally with God. Man, we've just kind of entered into this siesta time, and we really don't care, and we're just kind of coasting. How many moments have we missed because we are napping spiritually? We talked about this yesterday at Sherry Bennett's funeral. A common prayer request amongst Christians often what's common, is to, hey, Pastor, will you pray that I see the opportunities to tell others about Jesus? Will you pray that I see the opportunities to show God's love to those in need each day? And I'm wondering, I can't help but think, how many of those opportunities are missed simply because we are napping spiritually? Because if we're fully into following Jesus, there's certainly rest. There's Sabbath rest for the soul. There are breaks that need to be had, certainly. But if we're fully into following Jesus, do we nap spiritually where we just kind of miss the moments? And so these three are dozing off. And when they're fully awake, they experience the glory. They experience the thing that is taking place. And Peter blurts out, and the text is clear because he doesn't know what else to say. Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. Peter speaks first. We've talked about that. Peter speaks most. And Peter speaks when he doesn't even know what to say. He's going to talk. He's going to add something. Now, Christians, you mean well. But we have the tendency to speak because, man, we just feel that we have to say something in critical moments. We feel that we have to interject a thought in critical moments. And I was told a long time ago by Tom Plain, if you don't have anything to say, don't. So I talked to Stacy. I called him up. Man, I just found out this is your son, dude. What's happening? What's going on? I asked some questions. And he was like, man, I'm numb. I got nothing for you, Stacy. I don't know how to pastor to you. I don't know how to. There's nothing I can say at this moment that's going to bring any peace or comfort to your life. I love you and I need you. If you need me, call me. That's it. That's it. I didn't give advice. I didn't tell him anything beyond, man, I love you, because I do not have the words for what the man is going through. And yesterday, Joe and I laughed about this, as only Joe Bennett can do, at the graveside. You know, there's this moment where the presiding minister at the graveside says his final words, prays, and then goes down the line of the family. And I don't know who wrote that. I don't know where that came from. I don't know the tradition, but like every graveside thing I've ever been a part of, like it's something that's actually in the minister's handbook that you are supposed to do. And I know what we're saying. We're saying, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm praying for you. We are sharing our condolences. But I don't get it. I mean, I've told this family already, I love you, I'm praying for you, multiple times. I've prayed with the family directly. I've put my arms around them, I've hugged them, I've said all these things. And I'm like, I feel like what is coming now is just words that have to be said because we're expected to say words in this moment. Practically speaking, church, if you don't know what to say, don't. It's okay. Your presence in the situation is much more valuable than words. And Peter is on this mountain. He sees this glorious moment taking place. It tells us in his own account, I didn't know what to say because I'm frightened, so I'm just going to say stuff anyway. It's good for us to be here. And then he adds this detail. Let's put up 3 shelters. 3 shelters. Well, why the shelters? We get to number 3. There's Jesus, there's Moses, there's Elijah. But why the shelters? Like, why is that the thing? Why not, hey, let's build a fire and let's cook some food or something. Let's do something. The purpose of the shelter is because Peter wants to stay in the moment. The shelter is not anything other than a tent. That's what the word means. It means tent. that is not used for any other thing other than sleeping. I know people interpret it differently, but if you just interpret the raw text, it is a place to stay. It's shelter. And Peter has missed most of this moment because of his nap. And now he feels that he has to say something, and what he says serves his desires. It serves what he wants. Peter's suggestion reflects, again, human thinking and not divine wisdom. I mean, who wouldn't want to stay in that moment? How wonderful it would be to stay on the mountaintop and bask in the glory of Jesus like we've never seen before. I don't blame Peter. I love the mountaintop experiences. Man, I have fond memories of church camps. The church camps where we used to go Sunday after church and stay all the way to Saturday afternoon, like not like what we do with the lightweights now, like these full weeks. And I remember getting to Saturday afternoon, and I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay at church camp. And I remember going to the Christian conferences and the things. I didn't want to leave. Can we just stay at CIY forever, please? Man, I've had the moments in the car where the right playlist is just hitting me, and I am pouring out my heart to Jesus, and I'm worshiping Him in song and then in study. And I don't want that moment to end. We need mountaintop experiences in our faith journey. And I don't know how to tell you to create it. I asked our sermon team, and man, they were all over the place. Perry was like, when he got baptized, like that was his moment. Okay? Bob said being in prayer group with just a group of people that are in agreement with one another and they're praying. Like I don't know how to tell you to create the moment, but I know this for me. It usually involves doing something out of the norm. Jesus took them someplace different to reveal His glory to them. Why? Because there's routine. And routine is important. Coming to church every Sunday is important. The daily quiet times that you have with the Lord, important. The meditations that you have, important. But the routine can become just that, routine. I was thinking back over my Christian faith. I have personally found that my most memorable communion services on Sunday mornings have taken place when I've actually taken 2 to 3 weeks off from taking communion. We will always offer communion every single Sunday. That was the example set. There's not a command that says, I must take this on Sunday morning at church with you. No, we're to take it and we're to remember Him. Okay? But there's not a command that says I must do it here necessarily in this gathering. And I've had some tremendous communion experiences. You know what? When I've just taken a step back for a couple of weeks, I've broken the norm, and now I come back and I'm able to just focus on what took place at the cross. Anytime you start going through the motions relationally with man or God, man, it's okay to change things up from an active habit perspective. If you're doing the same thing over and over again, if your relationship is the same exact habits that now go from days to weeks to months, and now the routine, the relationship is starting to just feel like a routine, it's okay to take a step back and to change things up and to do things differently. We have to have variation in relationships because that's the only way we're going to know people differently. So Peter is being Peter. He wants to stay in the moment. But then God the Father now chimes in. Makes two proclamations and one instruction. Verse 7 says, then a cloud appeared and covered them. And the voice came from the cloud, this is my Son whom I love. Listen to him. And just like that, it's over. It's over. Moses and Elijah gone. Jesus is now back to normal, regular bleached Jesus. This is my Son, whom I love. Listen to him. So what are the implications of our lives? 4. 2 things I want to share with you real quick. The obvious and the simplest, God says, listen to him. That's what he says. The Greek word for listen is akuo. And it means to respond in conformity. That's what it means. It's not just hear the words. It's not just know the words. What God is saying to these men is that you are to respond. You are to carry out the actions of the instructions that Jesus is giving. It's what James writes. Don't just be hearers of the word, but be doers. So listen to him. Which ties into the next implication for our lives. The second is the thing that happens next. They're on the mountaintop, but they're not staying there. They're going to come down the mountain. The mountaintop experience is cool. We need mountaintop experiences. Jesus went up the mountain often, it's recorded, to pray, to get alone, to be alone with God. The work isn't done on the mountain, though. The filling of the Spirit, the replenishing of the Spirit, of the cup of who I am, pouring myself out to, it's replenished on the mountain. That's what Jesus shows us when he goes off by himself to the mountains to pray, so that I could see and know what the Father is doing, so that I could come back down. Ministry takes place in the valley. And so the next part of the story, immediately when Jesus gets down from the mountain, there are needy people, and the rest of the disciples are there trying to do ministry with them, and they can't figure out what to do. There's a demon-possessed boy, and they've tried everything. And Jesus comes back down the mountain, and like right away, he's frustrated. I mean, he says this. He says this, like we're coming down the mountain, there's this chaos, there's all this stuff going on. Jesus comes in, he tries to figure out, because his disciples are included, he gets the recap of what's going on, and this is what he says, you unbelieving generation. How long do I have to stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? And then Jesus interacts with the man, the Father. Jesus is like, you think I could do this? And the Father says, I think you could do it. He goes, if I'm weak in my faith, increase my faith in you right now, Jesus. And Jesus goes on to perform another miracle. Jesus went from the mountaintop experience right to the frustration with people, and it was all because of their lack of faith. Church, we got to know that we're not expected to live on the mountain for very long. We must be willing to return to the valley to do the work that Jesus was showing us that needed to be done. Now, I'm all about taking Sabbath. I'm all about stepping back from ministries to get rest. Man, but if you're here and you find yourself not actively serving, maybe you're just a passive server. You just serve when you're asked to serve, but you're not actively looking for places to serve. I think what our text is telling us today is we see how the continuation of it. And it's time for us to step up and serve. Why? Because it is in the valley moments that God shows His love and His mercy. And He's going to use you. You're the conduit in which His love and mercy is going to flow into the lives of other people. God, thank you for this text, and thank you for the example of Jesus. God, I just ask that we get those mountaintop experiences where we get to bask in your glory, where we are moved, where we don't want to leave. I pray for a renewal of spirit when we're there, an energy. God, I pray mostly that we're willing to come down, to serve, to use the very gifts that you have blessed us with, to serve in capacities. God, it doesn't have to be right here in this building on Sunday mornings. God, use us to serve in our neighborhoods. Use us to serve in our communities. Use us to serve in our office complexes. Use us to serve the people that we interact with, God. May the love and mercy that you have poured out on us so many times, may it flow through us into the lives of other people, Father. Thank you for mountaintop experiences, Lord, but I pray that we recognize they're not permanent. Not until we enter into your kingdom eternally.